Our story begins on Coruscant as the Jedi Council was in session to discuss the recent promotion of Anakin Skywalker, directed by Chancellor Palpatine. The Chancellor has made young Skywalker his personal representative on the Jedi Council, bypassing the Council itself to give Anakin a seat and, in Anakin's mind, the rank of Master. It was a bittersweet moment for Anakin, as he'd always dreamed of getting the honor of being a Council Master. And he certainly needed the rank so he could get access to the restricted archives, find a way to save Padme. But he still sort of wished that promotion came from the Council, instead of the Chancellor. Anakin always sought out some validation from the Council, as the first time he ever met them, he was rejected immediately. He wanted them to admit they were wrong about him. But today, they were forced to put Anakin on the Council, and in order to keep holding him back, Mace Windu told Skywalker that he is not granted the rank of Master. Anakin's mind was buzzing with anger, confusion, jealousy, betrayal, and he let some of that out, as Windu eventually had to forcefully tell Anakin to take a seat. And as the meeting continued, Anakin could not help but wonder why even allow him on the Council. If they were going to deny him mastery, why not deny him this role as well? And Anakin recalled what he was doing in this position anyways. He was expected to report back everything the Council says to Palpatine. And Anakin realized the Jedi were going to use him for the same thing, only to report on Palpatine instead. Anakin's head was spinning as he was stuck in this political game between Jedi and politicians. He couldn't take it. He was going to explode from the pressure and the pain of all of it. Being on this planet felt like being on Geonosis or Umbara during wartime. He needed a way out to clear his mind of everything. So, when the Battle of Kashyyyk was brought up, Anakin quickly jumped in and he said he will take his 501st Men to help out the Wookiees. The council members looked around with a bit of caution and concern, and Obi-Wan spoke up, saying they may have a different mission for Anakin. And Anakin jumped in to say he will not be doing their dirty work, he will not spy on Palpatine. That is what they want from him, right? The counselors looked to each other, and then Windu shrugged and shook his head, partly realizing all of this could be easier if Anakin was just gone. He was clearly a shatterpoint in all of this, and taking him away from any plans of the Sith could help. So he looked to Yoda, and the Grandmaster nodded his approval, and Anakin would be assigned the mission to help the Wookiees. Time would fly by for preparation of the mission, as Anakin was helping his men load up the ship, when Appo alerted him that he had visitors. Anakin stepped away from the Venator, finding Padme and Obi-Wan waiting for him together. Padme gave him a soft smile, and didn't necessarily try to hide anything from Obi-Wan, as she said she doesn't want him to leave again. Anakin told her that being here is ripping him apart. The Council and the Chancellor both want to use him to further their own agendas, and he's not sure where his loyalties lie. Politics are not where he's at his best. His best is in battle, helping people. Padme sighed, telling Anakin she knows, and she just told him to promise he will come back again. Anakin chuckled and said that he always does, and the two of them said a true goodbye, as Obi-Wan awkwardly waited. When he was finally alone with Anakin, he told his former Padawan that he was happy he made this choice. Anakin tilted his head, then asked if the Council wanted him to tell Anakin that he had to spy on Palpatine. Obi-Wan nodded slowly, then looked to the sky, and said that sometimes he wished that more of his master's defiance of the Council had rubbed off on him. Anakin laughed and said that makes two of them. He said goodbye to his old friend, and perhaps when they see each other again, this will all be over. As he left, Anakin turned, and he told Obi-Wan that if anything happens, just please make sure Padme is alright. And Obi-Wan promised he will keep her safe. When the Venator jumped to hyperspace, Anakin felt alone, but still content. He didn't tell Palpatine he was leaving, and he was sure Palpatine would be very disappointed, but Anakin had to do what was best for him, or things could go very wrong. The darkness that lived within Anakin's heart was begging to be let out more than ever, and Anakin had a feeling that being on Coruscant would not have helped him any longer, so he moved to the communications room, and Anakin would get an update on Ahsoka's campaign on Mandalore, and then Appo and a few others would fill Anakin in on the battle plans for Kashyyyk. Back on Coruscant, Masters Yoda and Windu would personally go to Palpatine's office, informing him that they've sent Anakin off-world per his own request. Palpatine raised an eyebrow, and he said he would have thought Skywalker would have been excited to be on the Council, unless the Jedi did something to upset him. When neither Jedi responded, Palpatine asked if they denied him mastery. Windu was beyond annoyed with Palpatine by this point in the war, and he told Palpatine now that the Council decides who deserves a seat and the rank of Master, not the Chancellor and not the Senate. Palpatine gave a kind smile with no light behind his eyes, and he said that Skywalker was the one who killed Dooku and rescued him, was he not? That mission alone should give him the new rank. And now Yoda spoke up, asking how exactly Anakin did manage to kill Dooku. And Palpatine, with his chair now turned to face the window, said that Anakin displayed strength and power beyond anything he'd ever seen before. It was truly to be admired, and he can only pray the Jedi and the Republic can win this war with him off-world. The Jedi were dismissed, and Palpatine felt his frustrations grow. Anakin was still too mentally weak to handle what was to come. So be it. And on Kashyyyk, Anakin would become familiar with the Wookiee leaders, and he spoke with Jedi Masters Luminara Unduli and Quinlan Vos, who were also stationed here. He also learned that Padawan Gungi, the Wookiee, was here with Luminara to enter this battle. The droid forces were gathered on the other side of the water, and they would be attacking soon. So Anakin learned everything he needed to know, and soon prepared for battle. And on Coruscant, the Jedi Council had regathered after many long hours, as they finally had the location of General Grievous. He was on Utapau, and the Jedi were getting impatient, with both the war coming to a slow end, and still no real sign of Darth Sidious. The Council wanted to draw him out, and they thought that it would be extremely difficult, with both Windu and Yoda still on Coruscant. Initially, that was the main reason that Yoda was going to volunteer to go to Kashyyyk, but with Anakin there instead, Yoda would offer to go to Utapau. The Council was largely in agreement that this was the right idea, and Obi-Wan agreed as well, as he wanted to keep his promise to Anakin and protect Padme should anything go wrong here on Coruscant. So Yoda would soon prepare and take off to Utapau with Gree and his men. And while Yoda flew through hyperspace, the Battle of Kashyyyk was in full force. The Kashyyyk beaches had turned to chaos as waves of separatist forces advanced through the murky waters. Tanks were rolling forward, cannons were blasting the Wookiee jungles with explosive fire. B-1 and B-2 super battle droids waded through the shallows, weapons raised to fire. The sky was illuminated by the glow of this blaster fire streaking across the battlefield. Wookiee warriors swung down from the trees, flying around in their small ships to pick off as many droids as they could from the water. The dense foliage trembled as the droids unleashed a relentless barrage, cutting down trees and scorching the earth. Gunships rose overhead, dropping reinforcements from the 501st Legion into the fight. Their blue-marked armor was barely visible through the smoke and the fire. At the front of the Wookiee charge from the beach, Anakin Skywalker ran with his lightsaber ignited. Blue glow was cutting through the mess of the battle. As the Wookiees unleashed their war cries, he surged forward with them, deflecting incoming fire, cutting through the advancing droids, trying to get out of the water. The ground shook as the Wookiees tore through the enemy ranks, ripping apart droids with their bare hands, launching grenades into the clustered formations. Anakin moved like a storm. Movements were fluid, precise. He slashed through super battle droids, and he was leading the charge deeper into enemy lines. Explosions were sending debris and droids flying, while the swampy terrain was littered with scrap metal and bodies. The clones, commanded by Oppo, held the perimeter. Their blasters were hammering into the advancing droids as their AT-RT walkers moved past them, stomping through the underbrush, cannons spewing fire at enemy spider droids, and tanks were pushing towards the shore. The guttural roars of Wookiee warriors were clashing with the cold mechanical sounds of the advancing droids, and Anakin felt at home in the chaos. Across the galaxy, Grandmaster Yoda confronted General Grievous on Utapau, and the general welcomed the challenge. Yoda flew at him, and Grievous spun his four blades to knock Yoda away. Yoda used the Force to throw machinery at Grievous, and Grievous used his mechanical body to dodge, moving back at the Green Jedi, the two of them clashing their blades together until Yoda forced Grievous to run away as a chase through the planet would get underway. The galaxy was at war, but the Separatists were on the run, and once Commander Gree saw Yoda fighting Grievous, he contacted the Jedi Temple to alert them that Grievous is on the run and will soon be taken care of. In the temple, Windu, Obi-Wan, Kit Fisto, Shakti, and Agen Kolar looked to each other, and Windu said that it's time Palpatine give up his emergency powers. He has stayed in office for far too long, and now that Grievous is going to be defeated, he must give up his powers, return to democracy, or he must be removed from office. Obi-Wan said this will be seen as treason, and Windu snapped that he's not afraid of these words. He must do what is right for the Republic, for democracy. Obi-Wan nodded his understanding, and Windu told Kenobi and Shaak Ti to stay and make sure the temple is kept safe while he, Fisto, Kolar, and Tin will go and speak to Palpatine. And so, the 4 Jedi would fly through the Coruscant night, with none of them saying a word. At this point, none of them knew that Palpatine was a Sith, so they suspected Sidious was close to Palpatine, and so they remained cautious as they entered his office and calmly asked to speak with him. Palpatine had the 4 Jedi sit in front of his desk, and then he asked what he can do for them. The Jedi sat, and Windu told Palpatine that it's time he give up his emergency powers and resign from his role as Chancellor. The war must end. Palpatine's face seemed to age right in front of the Jedi as he sighed, then slowly stood up, grabbing a bottle of wine, and began pouring a glass for him and the Jedi. He told them that it is up to the Senate. If they vote to remove him from office, then he will oblige. But Windu said in an icy tone that they cannot allow this. Palpatine controls the Senate. So Palpatine just dryly asked Windu what he plans to do. Arrest him? And the 4 Jedi stood up, and Windu said they will do what they must for this democracy. And not a second later, Saesee Tin's throat began to gurgle as he fell to the floor, dead, with the shattered wine bottle having pierced his throat. And like a phantom, Darth Sidious suddenly flew to the door, locking it behind him, and yelling out, "Help! Help! Security! This is murder!" And he smiled as a red blade ignited from his open hand. Aegon Kolar took a glance down to Saesee Tin, and Sidious shot lightning into his chest, shooting the Jedi out of the window to his death, as both Windu and Fisto could only watch. Windu pointed his blade at him, saying it's always been him. He turned to Kit Fisto, saying they will take him together, but Fisto's blade suddenly dipped, and a smear of red flashing darkness flew from behind a statue by the desk. Fisto's head bounced as it hit the floor, as the headless corpse collapsed, leaving just Windu and Sidious here, as Sidious pulled out both blades. Skywalker was not here to save him if he fails, so he simply will not fail. And the greatest duel of the century would commence, Jedi versus Sith. But this time, Mace Windu would not win. He was not prepared for this huge revelation, and Sidious was embracing his full power with nothing to lose. He didn't have to balance bringing Anakin to his side, so he let loose, and before long, Mace Windu would join the corpses here, as Sidious would stab both blades into Windu to end this. And as Windu lay on the floor, the last thing he saw was Sidious turning on his communicator to speak with the Grand Army he controlled, and he gave them new orders. Execute Order 66. On Megiddo, Felucia, Cato Nemoidia, dozens of Republic Venators, countless more planets, the light of the Jedi was quickly extinguished by the clones they all fought beside every single day for these years. The clones turned without hesitation, and on Utapau, as Yoda turned Grievous into spare parts, 6 Republic gunships surrounded his location and fired missiles and turrets at the Jedi. Yoda defended himself well, taking down 4 of them, but ultimately, the blaster fire hit him hard, and the platform exploded into the ground far below, leaving Yoda among the thousands of dead Jedi. On Kashyyyk, Anakin was aboard a Wookiee fluttercraft as he and a squad of Wookiees were taking out droid tanks when the new orders came in. The fluttercraft was suddenly hit with a Republic missile, and it descended down into the forests, crashing hard into the trees, in a crash that no one should have survived. And in the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan was fighting off waves of clones pouring through the temple. He turned to order Shaak Ti to get the younglings out of here, but Master T had already fallen dead. A blaster bolt hit Obi-Wan in the shoulder, and he was forced to run further in, and the clones, led by Commander Cody, just kept on coming through. The temple would become a massacre, as any successful Jedi defense was uprooted by the Grand Inquisitor, posing as a loyal temple guard, turning to slaughter Jedi defenses. Obi-Wan would find a group of younglings running across the top hallway, and he guided them out to a balcony, where Bail Organa was waiting with the speeder. The younglings got on, and Obi-Wan told Bail to leave. He will cover them. Bail took off, as Obi-Wan turned to see his 212th troopers firing at him. He took out 5 of them, but a detonator threw Kenobi hard to the ground. He looked up through the smoke to see Cody looking down at him with his blaster raised. Obi-Wan tried to speak to him, and for a split second, Cody hesitated. But then he raised his blaster and he fired. Obi-Wan used that split second to roll off the balcony. Cody's shot was searing his back, and Obi-Wan fell through the air, using the Force to guide him, as he eventually would land in a speeder, and was dropped off to the ground. Obi-Wan groaned in pain as he looked up at the temple. Fire and smoke were erupting like a volcano, and Obi-Wan put his hood up and he ran through the streets. None of this made any sense, but he was running now to save Padme. He had a promise to keep, and he could only hope that Anakin was still alive. On Kashyyyk, Anakin Skywalker woke up in a destroyed Wookiee ship stuck inside of the huge trees. Fires were spreading around, the smoke was thick as Anakin struggled to breathe, and as Anakin was trying to escape, the brush began to clear, and he was pulled to the ground. Anakin fell, then looked up to see the younger Wookiee holding a green lightsaber, trembling in fear. It was Gungi. He was here with Luminara for the battle, but he just watched Luminara be taken in by the clones, and he was alone when he found Skywalker in the trees. Anakin took a moment to think, and quickly understood what was going on. Fives, Rex, the inhibitor chips, it was never a virus. The clones were right, and the Jedi had failed to see the truth. Anakin tried feeling into the Force to find Yoda, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, anyone, but the Force was surrounded in darkness, and he soon heard a squad of clones moving through the trees, saying that they must confirm Anakin's death. Anakin was about to run at them, but he now realized a piece of the ship had pierced deep into his thigh, and he could barely walk at all. So Gungi put Anakin's arm over his shoulder, and the two of them limped away together. In the trees, Appo and his best allies would emerge to find the destroyed Wookiee ship along with the dead Wookiees, but they didn't find Anakin anywhere. After a bit, Appo would contact Lord Sidious and inform him that Anakin was missing, but they will put everything they have into finding him. Sidious heard this all the way from Coruscant, and a tinge of fear even rose up in him. He needed Skywalker dead. He told Appo to kill him, or his failure will be remembered, and he ended the message, as Sidious knew he needed leverage on Skywalker if he were truly still alive, and so he took Fox and others in the Coruscant Guard to his shuttle, as they took off to Padme's apartment. Across Coruscant, Obi-Wan Kenobi snuck into Padme's home as she was looking at the Jedi Temple with a great sadness. When she saw Obi-Wan injured but alive, she hugged him with great relief, and she asked about Anakin. Obi-Wan said he wasn't sure about any other Jedi. The clones turned on the temple, and he assumed that it happened everywhere. Obi-Wan held Padme as she cried, and Obi-Wan assured her that Anakin was the strongest of all of them. He had to be alive, but the two of them must now leave together. Padme nodded, and they began hurrying out with C-3PO and R2-D2 to Obi-Wan's speeder. But it was suddenly blown out of the air, as the balcony to the apartment was hit with explosions. Obi-Wan and Padme were thrown backwards as the Chancellor's shuttle landed amidst the fires. Obi-Wan struggled to his feet, and he ignited his lightsaber as the shuttle doors opened to reveal Sidious and the Guard members. Sidious laughed, saying he has wanted to do this for a long time, and he lifted up his hands. But Obi-Wan noticed something on the floor nearby. The word "Run" was written out in a blue spray, and Obi-Wan looked out, suddenly seeing R2-D2 flying through the air, holding up a thermal detonator. The little droid was sacrificing himself, and Sidious noticed Obi-Wan looking away, so he turned, seeing R2 fly right into the engines of the shuttle and set off the detonator. The explosion instantly killed all of the clones here, and Sidious was thrown hard against the wall, fires from the explosion covering him as he yelled in agonized pain. The explosion spread so quickly at Obi-Wan and Padme, as Obi-Wan could only hold up both hands, holding the fires back. The heat was scorching him as he turned his head just enough to tell Padme to get out of here, take the back elevator. Padme told Obi-Wan she can't leave him, more tears falling down her face, but Obi-Wan was being pushed back, the explosion fires growing stronger, and so he turned, using one hand to push Padme into the apartment as she flew backwards, and she watched the fires consume Kenobi. She had no choice other than to get into the elevator with 3PO, but as she did, she learned it was disabled from the bottom and could only go down with an emergency manual override from the office by the balcony that was already consumed in the fires. Padme had lost all hope, but C-3PO told her to stay here, and he waddled out of the elevator. 3PO just lost R2, and the droid understood now what sadness truly felt like, and now was his turn. He told Padme to thank Anakin for making him. He has lived a wonderful life, and 3PO disappeared into the fires, finding the override panel, and he pulled it down just as the fires melted his circuits, and he, too, was destroyed in all of it. Padme fell to the floor as the elevator began descending to the ground, and she didn't know what to do, but at least Palpatine was dead. But But as Padme left the elevator at the streets, she saw clone troopers nearby getting onto a shuttle with an emergency medical capsule. One of them yelled that Palpatine is still barely alive, but Padme now didn't waste a second. She ran into the streets to blend in. Palpatine and the clones would be hunting her. She had to get out of here. She didn't know who to trust, so she just ran into the underworld and she hid, waiting for the streets to be more calm so she could finally get off-world. Around 24 hours later, Anakin Skywalker and the Wookiee Gungi flew into Coruscant on a stolen Republic ship, and Anakin flew down to find Padme, hopefully still safe in her apartment. But Anakin would soon have his heart broken once more as he flew down and entered discreetly through the window, limping to find the apartment completely destroyed from the flames and explosions. Fire and rescue teams had already been through here, and was all just charred and destroyed. Anakin would fall to his knees in complete despair as he found one of 3PO's hands. He found the top of R2-D2. He found the lightsaber of Kenobi. And to top it all off, Anakin found the necklace that he once gave to Padme. Anakin was left alone with the revelation that R2, 3PO, Obi-Wan, and Padme all seemingly died here. And Anakin vowed to destroy whoever did this, and he eventually would stand up and go to find his ship, where Gungi was still waiting. The little Wookiee Jedi had hope in his eyes, more hope than Anakin could feel in the entire galaxy, and Gungi told Anakin in his Wookiee voice that they can fix this together. Anakin felt hopeless, but with a desire to avenge his friends, and he told Gungi he needs to do this alone. The Wookiee's eyes went sad, and Anakin said he was sorry, but everyone who gets close to him seemed to die off, so he told Gungi to leave. Anakin watched him go, and he decided he must return to the temple. The communications room will reveal who did this, and he will destroy them. Elsewhere in Coruscant, Darth Sidious was laying on a medical table, his body burned, heavily damaged from the exploded shuttle, and he was alive enough to guide the clones to the medical facility where he had parts to rebuild himself, or someone else if need be, if he were ever injured this terribly. The medical droids worked for many long hours to rebuild Sidious, putting his immobile limbs into a suit where he would be allowed to walk once more, and when it was done, Sidious rose on the table in a breathing helmet, and he vowed that this will not set him back. He will rule the galaxy. No one will stop him. And folks, that is part 1 of today's story. Part 2 releases tomorrow. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed part 1 quite a bit. Let me know down in the comments if you did. Let me know in the comments what you want to see in part 2. I really enjoyed this one. The scene where, 3PO and R2 sacrifice themselves. I thought that was fun. Get 3PO a little action, we don't see much from him, so really wanted to just see 3PO, R2-D2 sacrifice themselves. Of course, Palpatine doesn't die in the explosion. He becomes a little Darth Vader type variant thing, so gonna explore that in tomorrow's part 2. Let me know what you want to see more of. Obi-Wan's dead. Sorry, no reviving him. I don't think so. I've got part 2 pretty much outlined, so yeah. Kenobi's dead. Sorry. Yeah, so's Windu, so's Yoda, so's the entire Jedi Order pretty much, except for Anakin. So, yeah, tough. Anyways, thanks. Let me know what you want to see in part 2, and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe, by the way, subscribe so you can see part 2 when it hits your inbox or subscription feed. Okay, bye.